observed that women, when they connect with one another, tend to look at each other directly. If you look at women hanging out, having some girl time, they'll be looking at each other, directly, face to face. Guys, on the other hand, according to the study and these observations, would kind of sit together. They would be sitting side by side, looking at
the task at hand. Sort of is a neutralizer, keeping things safe, right? So it's difficult in relationships when you have the male-female combination, and the man is maybe happy to sit there on the couch, shoulder to shoulder, and have a common activity. Let's say watch TV or something. I don't recommend that for couples as a bonding thing, but there's some kind of sense that this is good, this is calm, this is what I'm looking for. Whereas for the woman, it might be very disengaging, right?
All right, Michael, here we are. This would be our very first of the podcast series, Return to Love. So we'll see how it goes. We were just saying off camera, off microphone, that we might stumble and make mistakes, but this is not anything that it's not supposed to be slick. So we're going to talk about our experiences in psychotherapy and life and see where it goes. So why don't we begin? So introducing ourselves, I'm Torrin Lucas, working with the Whitestone Clinic, and over to you, Michael.
Yeah, I'm Michael Browning, the founder and director of the Whitestone Clinic, and glad to be here today to share some of our thoughts on our experiences with psychotherapy in helping people that are struggling either in relationship or personal mental health. We're excited to share some of these experiences with our listeners, and hopefully we can be of some help for you.
Thanks. Yeah, we should probably start with some thoughts about the theme, the Return to Love theme, and you had shared again off camera, off mic, about your initial perspective on that. Well,
yeah, well, Return to Love has always been the motto for the Whitestone Clinic. And the idea of it is that most people who are in relational or personal distress are really having an issue of proper love. Either they're feeling they're not being loved well by their partner, or, they themselves have sort of self-conflicts. They're not fully loving themselves. That makes them more incapacitated, to give fully in love in a relationship. So the Return to Love kind of fits the overall efforts in psychotherapy and in healing the whole person and relationships. And that's what we use as our motto. We have a Supra program at the clinic that also uses that name, that addresses particularly people with, trauma over discovered secret sexual behaviors, and helping the individuals each heal and the couple heal. We use it there. But I just think it kind of fits a broad array of issues that people are coming in with.
So the capacity, to echo what you're saying, the capacity to love oneself, to be healthy in oneself, to be connected with oneself, allows us to be connected with others, those we love, right, in the community.
We can't give what we don't have, right? So if we're not in a place where we have that capacity for self-love, we're hampering our ability to love the other.
Yeah, and isn't it amazing how people can become entrenched in their own pattern, emotionally and behaviorally, and actually lose track of how they're influencing and how they're affecting others, even though that their best intentions are otherwise. So being able to shed a light on those patterns is, part of what we do as psychotherapists, right?
Exactly. We hold the mirror up and help them see what they can't see. And I mean, we have to keep in mind that most people are not malicious, and they don't it's not like they see how they're doing it wrong and they're purposely doing it wrong. Uh, Oftentimes they're blind to the effects of what they're doing, or they can't compute, they can't process the effects of what they're doing because it would just too much disrupt what already feels too disrupted. So therapy is a good way to explore those blind spots and help people to understand what they're putting into a relationship, but also where it's coming from.
And I thought just for the podcast, we might explore one of those patterns that seems common and comes up quite a bit, and that's the solution focus that sometimes guys can bring to a relationship. And I have a couple just today actually who were dealing with that very thing, and it's one of those things like as you described. The guy will be with the best intentions, trying to love and support the best way that they can, and they've learned. There is a gender aspect to this, but they've also learned that that's their role, and that's what they're expected from. And also in the case of this couple, he experienced a lot of criticism growing up and through other relationships where he didn't provide the right solution or didn't do it right, and so that just amps up the worry within the relationship.
Well,
What do
I
you?
think
Mhm,
there's a gendered element for sure. It doesn't apply to 100% because of, like you said, upbringing has a major factor. But I think
mhm,
we socialize the genders still differently, regardless of different political climates. People are still generally treating young boys growing up in the sense of their productivity, their contribution, in that sense. And then with females, it tends to be a little bit more of their presence and their supportive nature and that kind of thing. And that bleeds into couple relationships in adulthood, right?
mhm,
So,
mhm,
so from the male perspective, there might be more of a sense of I'm only really helpful here if I can be productive, solve a problem, take
mhm,
away the pain source or the pain problem.
mhm,
And where the female side of it might be more of, I just need you to hold space and be with me, have emotional support. I'll figure this thing out. I don't
mhm,
want you to do it for me. And so
mhm,
you have these competing kind of aspects in most couples, and I mean it's repetitive enough to be true, right? Like from all the many like hundreds and even a couple thousand
mhm,
people we see it over and over again. And I
mhm,
think that one of the major stressor points in couple sessions is that you often see the female partner, um, you know, complaining, I guess, or criticizing that they're not getting the kind of support that they're looking for from their male
mhm,
partner, whereas the male partner is feeling that criticism, and that's
mhm,
just fixing in on that what you described earlier, that sense of any past failures, a sense of being told you're not good enough, you're not living up to the standard. And
mhm,
so you have this sort of back and forth with both partners not satisfied, right? Both
mhm.
feeling
That's
unsupplied in what they're
yeah,
looking for. Right.
yeah, and the socializing factor is fascinating, isn't it? And I've come across a couple of studies that have examined the differences developmentally and
Mhm.
observations. One of the observations that I remember, which is kind of neat, was how it was observed that women, when they connect with one another, tend to look at each other directly. If you look at women hanging out, having
Mhm.
some girl time, they'll
Mhm.
be looking at each other, directly, face to face.
Mhm.
Guys, on the other hand, according to the study and these observations, would kind of sit together.
Mhm.
They would be sitting side by side, looking at sort of over there. Uh,
Right.
and likewise, so the attachment is we're connecting verbally, having a conversation, connecting
Mhm.
emotionally, and having
Mhm.
that repertoire of language around connection.
Mhm.
Whereas guys, again, this is these stereotypes, but according to the
Yeah,
studies, guys are engaged in attaching through activity and action.
that's right. It's shoulder to shoulder communication in male to male relationship. The task at hand sort of is a neutralizer, keeping things safe, right? So we're out hunting, or we're out fixing, putting together a deck, or whatever the thing is. The activity is the protection against certain vulnerability. But it's also a shared joy, right? It's a shared kind of sense of connecting by the accomplishment of the thing. So it's difficult in relationships when you have the male female combination, and the man is maybe happy to sit there on the couch shoulder to shoulder and have a common activity. Let's say watch TV or something. I don't recommend that for couples as a bonding thing, but there's some kind of sense that this is good, this is calm, this is what I'm looking for. Whereas for the woman, it might be very disengaging, right? Because we're not face to face. It's not about us talking. It's this object we're looking at.
Mhm.
And so, one part of the couple is going to get more satisfaction from some activities, while the other is going to get more satisfaction from other activities.
Mhm.
And they come into therapy because there's maybe a sense there's too much of the other and not what they want. But yeah, that aspect you bring up is very key in how men will often talk. Sometimes you might get more out of your male partner, your husband, with sitting side by side and talking, right?
Mhm.
They'll be more comfortable sometimes talking that way. But when you turn them face to
Mhm.
face to you, there's a different dynamic, right?
Mhm.
And they still need to practice that. Like, one thing we try to teach couples is to learn both ways. The man has to learn how to speak face to face and be vulnerable
Mhm.
there, whereas the woman might also be able to participate in common activities and
Mhm.
share certain things then.
Yes, that's a really good point. And I should emphasize at this point that we are talking about stereotypes. So, uh,
Sure.
but but taking on your point, which was that the women and the female gender can, you know, take from this, um, a different approach, a different strategy, because often from I am a guy myself, so maybe I'm sensitive to the criticism that, hey, we try to provide solutions all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
so the emphasis on guys to not just provide solutions, but to be
Mm-hmm.
present and to hear. But what I'm hearing from you, Michael, is a really good point, is that women can adjust as well. And in my couple sessions today, one of the things that arose was what was going on for the husband,
Mm-hmm.
was fear. Fear was,
Right.
and anxiety was arising, because his wife was unhappy.
Right.
And so that anxiety and that fear, I mean, we've all felt fear, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
fight or flight. I got to do something about this because I'm not
Mm-hmm.
safe, and neither is my family, and neither is my wife. So
Right.
that feeling of needing a solution is a real driver. It's an existential one. And so if the wife, or the female gender, were able to say, "Hey, I can see that this is frightening for you," you
Mm-hmm.
know, but I'm okay, and I
Well,
just
and
want to
but to
express.
be fair, yeah, to be fair
Mhm.
to female, the female partner,
Mhm.
um, the male approach doesn't always get into deep topics. You know what I mean? Like, a man could go golfing with his buddies and be focused on golfing, and get
Yeah,
home, and the wife will ask, "So how's so and so doing?" And it's like, I don't know, he seems fine. And because there was no deeper discussion in the activity. You see what I'm saying?
I
It,
do. I do. Yeah, and that goes back to developmentally.
Mhm.
Guys learn their worth, their self worth by doing, and
Mhm.
and women again stereotypically learn
Mhm.
by engaging and sharing, and
Right.
so that becomes reinforcing over time. But the point I want to the thing I'm trying to really highlight here is when things get difficult within the couple,
Mhm.
and there's responses and activations which draw from past experiences,
Mhm.
then we revert to type. We revert to those
We do.
stereotypes. You know.
We do. And we
And,
want them to speak in our language, right? So the idea that I get out of a relationship through the ways I operate, right? So if it delivers in a way that's not how I operate, it might be good in theory, but I don't feel it, right? It doesn't connect with my way of operating. And a coupleship is that dance between, trying to give it both ways. And that's difficult. It's like speaking two languages at the same time.
Hmm.
So, that takes a lot of practice and a lot of awareness. And I think, though, it brings us back to the original point is the man is actually trying to do something good for their partner. They're not trying to deny them something, but they're speaking in their own operating language, right? So, oh, you're talking about a problem. Well, here, right away, I had a thought. If we did this or you did this, that would get rid of the problem. And that's more of the male thinking, right? Whereas the woman's looking like, you didn't support me. Like she can intellectually go, that's a pretty good idea. But she's not going to want to take up that idea
Hmm.
because she didn't first feel the emotional support that the person, the husband or whoever was with her in the explaining of the problem. And that's what is often missing, right? So I think that, learning the language both ways helps. Like, for instance, a female partner approaching their man while he's working on the computer, right? He's doing emails or whatever, some kind of task on the computer, and she just wants to kind of come up and talk. The kind of focus of the task completion in the man's brain is going to make him distracted. So now, if he tries to turn his attention to what is being brought up, he just wants to get that out of the way so he can stay on task, right? And that is very dismissive to the female partner because you're basically not looking at the person as the
Hmm.
main subject. You're looking at the presenting problem as the main subject, and you're trying to fix it for them, which is a type of disempowerment as well, right? Because they're usually quite able adults and they could solve their own problems, but you kind of take the place of the decision making from them with your solution idea. But
Hmm.
I'm just bringing that point up because a lot of the struggles I get with couples is that they aren't going together to talk about something in a setup in a way that makes it safe and clear what the objective is, why we're doing this. They're being sort of interrupted in flow, and they're going to not get the best result out of their partner.
Hmm. Yeah, and when you're talking, when you're reflecting on that, I was definitely picturing experiences that I've had at my house as well with
Mhm.
family. So yeah, point well taken. And I want to just sort of conclude the session here today, the inaugural
Mhm.
podcast episode, and just share with our listeners a video that I think they might find interesting. It's called "It's Not About the Nail." If you were to
Mm.
search that on YouTube, it's sort of a
Yeah,
lighthearted look
yeah,
at
the
some.
comedy thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
a comedy thing. Yeah,
Mhm.
but anyway, thank you, Michael. I guess that concludes our episode.
Okay. Well, it was great talking with you, and I look forward to future conversations. Hopefully, our listeners found some of this helpful. And obviously, it's not
Mhm.
all encompassing, and there's many things we didn't say. And you might be saying, "What about this?" or "What about that?" Fair enough. It's a short conversation, and we'll probably hit many of those topics in future conversations.
Yeah, for sure. And if there are any comments, add them if you can.
Mhm.
And we'll do some more of these episodes. We'll continue to, touch on these topics that are important to you and I in psychotherapy.
Yeah, and if
Thanks.
you're on a YouTube or whatever you're watching us on, put comments down below also of ideas, things you'd like to hear us talk about. We can certainly line those up for future conversations. And yeah, and where you're hailing from, where you're watching us from, give us some idea of who might be watching us so that we can help, fix our themes to our audience. So appreciate that.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate you.
All right,
Bye.
all the best.